The cold steel of the handcuffs felt like a branding iron against my wrists, a physical manifestation of the lie that had just shattered my entire professional existence at the zenith of the high-stakes world of historical jewelry auctions. Detective Harding's voice was low, heavy with disappointment, the kind reserved for those who violate sacred, long-held trust. "The Star of Lyra necklace is gone, Miss Vale. A loss of $50 million, and all forensic evidence points directly to your unique vault access history." I looked across the polished mahogany table at Serafina Voss, my colleague and immediate rival for the directorship, who offered a small, exquisitely sympathetic downturn of her lips, a gesture of polished faux pity that barely concealed the triumphant, predatory gleam in her emerald eyes, a look that instantly revealed the architects of my current misery. That look, that calculated, fleeting flicker of victory in her gaze, was the explosive hook that didn't just grab my attention. It ignited a cold, crystalline, enduring fury deep within my chest, replacing the shock of betrayal with the clarity of purpose. I'm Anya Vale, and for 12 years I had upheld the unimpeachable integrity of the prestigious Cristofori auction house, safeguarding billions in historical jewels and priceless art, only to have my reputation, my honor, and my entire professional life reduced to ash by a jealous rival's single, meticulously executed accusation. The evidence, they held, a tiny, micro-engraved sapphire found discreetly tucked inside the lining of my specialized auction portfolio, was a masterpiece of malice, a frame job so meticulously constructed that proving my innocence would require me not merely to dismantle the evidence, but to completely reverse engineer the sophisticated, sociopathic mind of the woman who sought to destroy me, leveraging my own proprietary security knowledge against me. In that shattering moment of utter professional and personal freefall, I made an internal vow. I would not passively fight her flawed accusations. I would strategically retreat, gather intelligence, and then let her own brilliant, over-engineered trap become the perfect instrument of her catastrophic undoing, ensuring that the next time Serafina Voss smiled, it would be a mask of pure, paralyzing terror, broadcasting her guilt to the world. My pristine professional reputation wasn't merely a matter of good conduct or flawless character. It was rigorously built on my specialized expertise in auction security design and forensic traceability, an undeniable strength that Serafina had cynically and brilliantly exploited to craft her frame. I was, ironically, the one who originally designed the security protocols for the high-value vault, the one who oversaw the installation of the very biometric access points that recorded my supposed involvement, and the one who specifically warned senior management years ago about the critical vulnerabilities inherent in the standardized digital surveillance logging system. Knowledge Serafina, who was aggressively vying for the coveted directorship of acquisitions, turned into a precise, step-by-step blueprint for my professional downfall. Serafina's motive was brutally transparent and purely opportunistic. With me summarily removed and utterly disgraced, the lucrative directorship was hers by default, granting her unprecedented access to Cristofori's most powerful, high-net-worth clientele and, perhaps more significantly, its boundless, opaque financial resources. The Star of Lyra, a necklace valued at over $50 million and scheduled to be the centerpiece of the annual spring auction, was the perfect, high-profile bait to ensure the frame was undeniable. Crucially, the micro-engraved sapphire found in my belongings was the masterstroke. It was one of the unique, coded tracer stones I myself had recommended embedding into all top-tier jewels for authentication purposes, a security feature I now regretted suggesting. Only a select few knew the exact, complex pattern of the engraving, and Serafina, as the vault access assistant during the security update, was one of them. The frame was ruthlessly brilliant because it leveraged my own specialized expertise and proprietary knowledge against me, making my protestations of innocence sound exactly like the predictable, desperate lies of a cornered criminal who foolishly believed she was too clever to be caught by the very safeguards she had designed. The subsequent week was an agonizing blur of mandated police procedure, grueling legal consultation, and public, headline-driven shame, a media frenzy that saw my name and hard-won reputation dragged through the mud with every sensational, unfounded accusation. I was eventually released on exorbitant bail, my entire life suspended in a terrifying, uncertain limbo, but I refused to emotionally or professionally retreat into despair. I knew instinctively that the official police investigation, constrained by procedure and lack of specialized internal knowledge, would only follow the well-trodden bias trail Serafina had meticulously laid. The corrupted surveillance logs, the misleading biometric anomalies, the perfectly planted sapphire, all leading inexorably back to my front door. My only hope for exoneration was to run a rapid, parallel, secret forensic investigation, leveraging my deep proprietary understanding of Christofori's unique, customized security infrastructure, which no outside investigator would ever fully grasp. My immediate, primary focus narrowed critically to the complex, non-standard security system Serafina had recently overseen the upgrade of, a system she proudly touted in meetings as unbreakable, technologically state-of-the-art. This specific, almost obsessive focus on the complexity itself provided the initial, crucial tension hook. Why was the system so unnecessarily convoluted, layered with obscure custom code even for a facility of this immense caliber? I remembered her insistence on using a highly customized, non-standard digital time server for the surveillance logs, a minute detail I had initially dismissed as professional eccentricity, but now screamed of malicious intent. Now every fiber of my being screamed that the deliberate, unnecessary complexity itself was the ultimate disguise, the deliberately confusing shell hiding the simple, devastating truth of her digital malice. The long, grueling nights following my release were spent in a desperate, isolated race against time, reverse engineering the vault's customized digital security architecture purely from memory, and secretly leaked schematics I had fortunately retained. A complex process that felt like fighting a ghost in the machine, battling against code that constantly shifted its meaning. It was during this painstaking solitary analysis that I uncovered the first, critical, undeniable piece of evidence: the subtle, specific mathematical signature of digital time tampering deep within the backup surveillance log metadata, a signature unique to the Christofori system. The critical timestamp for the 30-minute window surrounding the reported theft was not missing, but slightly, imperceptibly corrupted, suggesting a sophisticated, pre-recorded replay attack, where an old, harmless segment of video was substituted for the actual footage of the theft, making it deceptively look like the vault was untouched and secured during the crucial period. But the corruption was too clean, too precise. It lacked the expected random error of a simple external hack. It was precisely structured, suggesting it was part of the system's intended design, a hidden backdoor Serafina had intentionally woven into the code during the upgrade process she championed. This realization was a chilling, immediate escalation of the suspense and the scope of the crime. Serafina hadn't simply committed theft. She had fundamentally and systematically compromised the technological integrity of a major international institution for the singular, selfish purpose of obtaining a career promotion. The deep emotional storytelling of this profound betrayal was overwhelming. It was no longer about recovering a necklace or regaining a job, but about exposing a level of calculated, almost sociopathic manipulation that threatened the very trust and foundations of what a trusted institution represented, and how easily internal corruption could mistakenly appear to merely be individual employee malfeasance. Foundations of trust and security in the high-stakes, rarefied world we inhabited. My forensic focus immediately narrowed to two seemingly benign yet critical components of Serafina's custom system: the non-standard digital time server, which managed the synchronization of all security cameras, and a specific, localized humidity sensor near the vault entrance, a bizarre inclusion she had forcefully argued was vital for preserving antique documents, despite the jewelry vault having no such paper documents. The seemingly unrelated humidity sensor turned out to be the hidden, brilliant key. It was intrinsically linked to the digital time server and acted as an environmental override, capable of creating a temporary, isolated network loop that allowed the surveillance data to be briefly copied, manipulated, and re-uploaded without triggering an alert at the central primary security hub. A highly complex yet totally unnecessary layer of custom code. Serafina had meticulously crafted a scenario where the physical theft looked, mathematically, impossible without an insider using the traceable biometric system, me. Yet the actual act was completely untraceable to her because the physical theft was perfectly covered by the digital time loop she precisely controlled. The emotional pressure escalated exponentially as I realized the enormous, calculated risk she had taken, a risk that meant she viewed me not just as a professional competitor, but as an expendable, useful asset to be destroyed and discarded without a moment's hesitation, a testament to her ruthless ambition. Knowing the sophistication involved, I had to operate under the assumption that she had already moved or sold the Star of Lyra, making physical recovery difficult, thereby forcing my strategy to shift entirely to exposing her manipulation of the digital evidence, the one crime she erroneously thought was absolutely invisible and untraceable. The need to shift my position dramatically from desperate defense to aggressive surgical offense became paramount. I needed to subtly bait Serafina into inadvertently revealing her true digital fingerprint, forcing her hand. I began the delicate process of leaking false, highly technical information through a carefully selected, trusted, and recently retired security consultant who still advised Cristofori on minor matters, suggesting that a recent, random security software update had inadvertently created a subtle glitch in the humidity sensor's operating parameters, a glitch that theoretically required an immediate manual security patch from the administrator. I knew Serafina, obsessed with controlling every minute variable of her meticulously executed crime and fearing exposure, would instantly panic at the thought of this glitch suddenly exposing her hidden time loop and her involvement. This meticulously crafted leak was the first counter-trap, a calculated, enormous risk that cost me a substantial portion of my remaining personal savings to pay the consultant for his silence and cooperation, but the potential life-changing payoff was worth the financial strain. The suspense during this waiting period was almost unbearable, focusing entirely on whether her overwhelming paranoia and compulsive need for absolute control and perfection would ultimately outweigh her professional caution and discipline. Every silent hour that passed without a reaction from her meant I was closer to losing my freedom and my life's work, constantly monitoring the network for any sign of her unauthorized login. My deep emotional storytelling centered on the internal conflict. The woman who had always built systems based on cold, objective logic was now forced to rely entirely on the unpredictable, volatile, and deeply flawed nature of human vanity and fear to survive, betting everything on Serafina's compulsive desire for an immaculate crime. The bait worked exactly as planned, confirming my most profound and darkest suspicion of her character and her fatal flaw of perfectionism. Late one evening, the highly sensitive firewalls I had secretly erected around the security system's logging server sent me a single highly encrypted maintenance log alert. It detailed an unauthorized, sophisticated remote access attempt that successfully patched the supposed flawed humidity sensor parameter, an access attempt that could only have been executed by someone with Serafina's unique administrative credentials and her detailed, proprietary knowledge of the sensor's hidden backdoor function. Critically, the log contained a single, unique IP signature temporarily linked to a remote, high-security server outside of Cristofori's network. This was the definitive digital fingerprint I needed, the first undeniable, provable evidence of her direct, active involvement in tampering with the system post-theft, the link to the external world. I immediately sent an anonymous, two-word message to Serafina's personal encrypted work account, designed solely for internal communication. Patch applied. This tense, minimalist, and deeply unnerving confrontation was designed to plant the seed of paralyzing doubt in her mind, letting her know unequivocally that someone, an unknown entity with deep knowledge of her scheme, was watching her every move. Someone knew exactly what she had done, but refusing for the moment to reveal my full hand. I wanted her fear to consume her, to push her toward the next catastrophic, irreversible mistake that would fully expose her entire scheme to the authorities, who were ironically still officially pursuing me as their prime suspect. Using the encrypted IP signature extracted from the maintenance log, I initiated a deep, incredibly complex digital trace, pouring every remaining dollar into contracting an elite international forensic data firm to assist my solitary efforts. The elaborate path led, not as she surely expected, to Serafina's personal offshore accounts or obvious financial proxies, which would have been too obvious, but to a seemingly legitimate, newly registered blind corporation specializing obtusely in luxury asset management and secure logistics, based in a remote, financially opaque offshore jurisdiction with highly restrictive corporate transparency laws. This corporation, which I painstakingly managed to infiltrate using a sophisticated phishing attack on a low-level administrator, had made one unusual high-value transaction, a substantial sum paid to a small private security firm for the rental of an extremely rare, custom-built piece of technology, a highly specialized RFID key activation scanner used for validating and duplicating ultra-secure key fobs common in high-security vaults. The missing star of Lyra, I suddenly remembered with a chilling clarity that made my blood run cold, was stored not just behind a biometric lock and heavy steel door, but within a secondary, self-locking, clear protective case activated by a specific RFID key fob, a crucial fact known only to me, Serafina, and the two senior managing partners. This direct connection, this sudden, terrifying realization that the theft involved advanced technological duplication, was the strongest mid-story tension hook yet, proving that the crime was far more sophisticated than simply slipping a necklace into a portfolio. The immediate what happens next
was terrifyingly clear. The missing necklace wasn't just carelessly gone, it had been cloned, duplicated, or precisely tracked using this obscure, expensive, rented technology, demanding an immediate, decisive, and final counterstrike that targeted the core of her technological arrogance. Since the physical location of the genuine Star of Lyra was still a complete, frustrating mystery and likely in transit overseas, I shifted my focus entirely to leveraging the planted evidence. The micro-engraved sapphire found in my bag, which was the most vulnerable part of her scheme. I needed to leverage Serafina's inherent professional confidence in her own framing device against her, using her own obsession with detail as a weapon. I collaborated with the two senior Cristofori partners, excluding the silent, strangely absent David Thorne, who still maintained a residual, grudging professional faith in my expertise, convincing them to stage a highly confidential emergency private auction for a newly discovered sapphire of identical size, cut, and color to the one planted in my portfolio. This fake sapphire, however, was secretly commissioned by me and contained a perfectly replicated micro-engraving matching the code on the planted evidence, a forensic duplication only possible with my proprietary knowledge of the tracer stone process. The entire operation was a massive, desperate gamble, predicated entirely on the psychological certainty that Serafina, now facing the intense internal pressure of her exposed digital tampering, would feel an overwhelming, compulsive need to know who was selling the potential twin to her unique piece of planted evidence, fearing immediate exposure. The emotional storytelling was now externalized, a tense, elaborate performance where my future, my freedom, and my hard-won reputation hung entirely on Serafina's predictable, greedy paranoia and her fatal flaw of needing to control every single aspect of her meticulously planned deception. The day of the fake private auction arrived, the opulent viewing room at Cristofori heavy with manufactured suspense and the rich scent of expensive fear and anticipation. Serafina was conspicuously present, having used her lingering administrative authority to gain unauthorized access. Her carefully composed expression, a mask of professional curiosity that couldn't completely hide the desperate, cornered, hunted look in her eyes. The magnificent, newly discovered sapphire was dramatically unveiled under bright, focused lighting, its flawless facets catching the light, and I watched Serafina's practiced composure fracture slightly, a tiny crack in her emotional armor. She clearly recognized the unique cut and the specific size, thinking either A, a major, well-informed competitor had somehow found the real necklace's twin stone, or B, someone was deliberately trying to expose her exact planting scheme, forcing her hand. She began to bid aggressively, her innate competitive nature and greed completely overriding her professional caution, desperate to control the stone and thus control the unfolding narrative. This was the exact calculated moment of her total exposure. As the bidding reached an artificially inflated climax, I calmly stepped forward from the shadows, interrupting the auction with a quiet, firm voice, and directed the senior partner to immediately display the sapphire's microengraving, using the high-powered auction loop, projecting the intricate image onto a large central screen for all to see, sealing her fate. The projected image showed the identical, minute code, the specific, proprietary coded tracer pattern that Serafina herself had used to meticulously frame me. A collective, horrified gasp swept the room as the wealthy bidders realized the true, sinister nature of the auction. Serafina's face drained of all remaining color as the sudden, horrifying realization slammed into her with the force of a physical blow. She wasn't bidding on a competitor's stone. She was bidding on a flawless, identical replica of the very evidence she had planted in my innocent bag. Before she could physically process the shock and formulate a lie, I calmly took the floor, presenting the evidence not of the Star of Lyra's location, which was still unknown, but of her more easily provable digital crime. I projected the encrypted maintenance log, the undeniable IP signature, and the official documents linking her blind corporation to the rental of the advanced RFID key activation scanner. I calmly and meticulously explained to the stunned room how she used the simple humidity sensor to create a crucial time loop, tampering with the surveillance logs to cover the exact time the necklace went missing. The exposure was total, complete, forensic, and utterly undeniable. The final devastating blow was the revelation that the two witnesses to the supposed theft, two minor Cristofori employees, were actually undercover federal officers, and the auction was in fact an official, elaborate police sting operation. Serafina's meticulously constructed composure completely dissolved in a terrifying fit of raw panic, leading directly to the dramatic, near-ending cliff-style twist that no one, not even I in my deepest calculations, had fully anticipated.
Said he was just testing the system. The room fell into absolute, shocked silence. David Thorne, the other senior partner, the quiet, unassuming, trusted figure who was meant to be one of my allies and who was watching the auction remotely via a secure private link, was suddenly revealed as the true master manipulator, the puppet master who had carefully fed Serafina the exact tools and proprietary knowledge required to frame me, while he orchestrated the actual, far greater, multi-million-dollar theft himself. David, witnessing Serafina's panicked confession via the secure video feed, immediately disconnected and, panicking, began frantically scrambling to cover his tracks and flee, completely unaware that I had already built a final decisive countertrap for him too, anticipating the inevitability of a deeper, systemic betrayal within Cristofori's highest ranks. I immediately turned my attention away from the sobbing, now irrelevant Serafina, commanding the room with newfound cold authority, the focus shifting instantly and entirely to the true hidden villain who held the real prize. "The RFID log, detective," I stated clearly, addressing the undercover officer now securing the distraught Serafina. check the digital time server log for an unauthorized RFID key activation that occurred 10 minutes before Serafina initiated her time loop. David Thorne was in the vault earlier that week. He didn't use the Star of Lyra's key fob. He used the expensive RFID scanner his blind corporation rented to secretly duplicate the master key fob, replacing the Star of Lyra with a flawless custom-made resin replica to buy himself time. My proprietary security knowledge, once the source of my professional demise, was now the instrument of absolute precise justice. The final, powerful, emotional payoff came not in the recovery of the $50 million necklace, but in the complete, soul-cleansing restoration of my professional honor and the validation of my intellect. David Thorne was swiftly apprehended, attempting to board a private jet in possession of the genuine Star of Lyra, which was found secured inside a briefcase that still registered the original RFID key activation log, the ultimate digital thread I had used to unravel his multi-layered, perfect betrayal. I was completely exonerated, hailed as the forensic Suro who saved the auction house from internal rot. I accepted the directorship of acquisitions not for the title or the power, but for the profound, quiet satisfaction of knowing that justice, built on intellect and unwavering integrity, had been perfectly served, closing the door forever on the malice of the dishonest.